Hey, you geeks! I might as well review the other book I read this month, The Blade Itself by Joe Ambercrombie. I've teased it, so now I gotta follow through. The book is well written, with interesting characters and a large fan base. It's certainly not a bad book, but...
Ask if it sparks joy for you.
And for me, it does not. The Blade itself has the dubious honor of being the first book I've read 1.5 times. The ending was compelling enough to make me want to reread it to see what I missed, but when I began again, even picking up all the little details, I just wasn't entertained. I'm not sure if I'll finish the series. Tell you what, if this video gets 200 likes, I'll read the next book. There's nothing wrong with the story, it's just that Abercrombie's writing style was not effective on making me care. I've given this a whole section in my spoilerific breakdown, along with characters, world building, magic system, and plot. Characters.
I knew it, I'm surrounded by assholes.
Logan, the northern barbarian who's just tougher than you. I don't really mind this trope because, frankly, it's true.
Good day, welcome to the Great White North.
Those that live up in the Great Wide North are just better. Logan also spends his time doing his best Leonardo going for an Oscar imitation, and I do like wilderness survival stories. I truly decided that I liked him when he carried the wizard's apprentice back to the library. And then he was just kind of there. Until the big reveal at the end that he goes into a bloodlust rage during battle.
Ooh, I'm pretty scared.
That wasn't much of a twist. It was heavily foreshadowed. I was more surprised that he didn't kill the woman than that he killed everyone else. This was one of many attempts to shock me that just didn't work. I want to be shocked and revolted, and in fantasy books, mad bloodlust alone is not shocking. Giselle Dan Luther is whiny, self-centered, and utterly unlikable. But I like that in every one of his chapters, he got beat up. That was satisfying since I couldn't reach through the page and do it myself. I can't believe that the Vest Girl agreed to wait for him. Though she has not had the best men in her life, even her brother, who is an alright guy elsewhere, loses it when he's with her. I was more shocked by Vest punching his sister than anything else in this book. Even more than Luther winning the tournament with Baez's help. I suppose the author is setting up a love triangle between Luther, Adi Vest, and Inquisitor Glockter. What makes the skeptical Inquisitor type work is that they are supposed to be holding an office in defense of a faith, yet possess none of it themselves. Abercrombie's Inquisition is a completely secular affair in service of the king.
I think you're missing the basic point here.
So Glockter's clerical trappings, up to the Archlector dressing in white with a skull cap, is so odd. Like a twisted episode of Father Brown Mysteries, where the detective is utterly ineffective. Glockter didn't even uncover that the wizard and Logan got their outfits from a costume shop. On top of that, I listened to the audiobook. Many a fellow listener has commended the narrator for giving Glockter a lisp.
That, sir, is an investigated fabrication.
I, however, can speak from years of experience and therapy. You need front teeth to make the lisp noise the narrator makes. I honestly don't know what sound a man with half his teeth missing would make. Yet it would have been less distracting for me if the narrator had just spoken normally, maybe a little raspy for effect. Baez. Aha! the magical mentor who, because this book is grimdark, is dabbling in the dark arts, also known as making, which is bad? Baez clearly has his own agenda and sense of morality, which is a bit too ruthless to be considered noble. He wants to help the protagonist fight against the really, really, really bad guys. I'm not sure I want to trust the fate of the world to him, but seeing as he's the only mildly decent human powerful enough to take the burden, I don't think I have much of a choice. Maybe our group of miscreants will band together in the end and save the world with the power of friendship, but I doubt it. I was amused that the author used the old trope of interrupting a hot character in their bath with him.
Naked time!
That was probably a mental image I could have lived without, but it was something. Writing style. Early in this book, Inquisitor Glockter interrogates a man by slowly chopping off his fingers 1 centimeter at a time or so. The scene is supposed to be disgusting, a display of the Inquisitor's depravity and brutal methods.
No. God! God!
Bored might be a bit strong, but it did not repulse me in the way I think the author was intending. Hello Future Me released a video on character deaths, which I think also applies to this scene.
Focusing on visceral bodily descriptors like the snap of bones breaking and specific bodily trauma creates fear and horror in the reader.
The scene was written entirely as a list of physical descriptions, with the only emotion coming from Glockter. He views it as a challenge of wills. He doesn't admit to himself that he's enjoying this. Ambercrombie leaves the reader with an emotionless void while the torture goes on. This might be enough to disgust most readers, but I've lived with too many nurses to be repulsed by physical descriptions of bodily injuries. After one learns to eat spaghetti while talking about blood, guts, and other bodily fluids in places they should not be, one gains a disassociation with horror genre books.
You know, if you can sort of muscle your way past the gag reflex, all kinds of food possibilities open up.
Unfortunately, Abercrombie has no interest in making me feel the character's emotional pain. Nothing wrong with that as a writing style, but it's just not for me. Magic system. Exists? The apparently good magic system seems to be rather generic, requiring knowledge of the world to use it in unusual ways. The whole reaching out and touching the other side seems interesting.
I got friends on the other side.
He's got friends on the other side.
But we barely get into it. The first law gets basically a cameo in this book, with Baez ready, willing, and able to break it. It also appears he needs Logan's spirit talking power and the girl's blood. No idea what he needs Luthor for, but I'm guessing it has something to do with whoever Luthor's real father is. It will be such a shock for him to discover he's from common stock. I hoped we'd see more magic in the House of the Maker, and I suppose we did, but it was the haunted house kind of shenanigans, rather than hard, ascertainable magical actions and their associated costs. The blade itself keeps on referring to some terrible costs, and hopes that the mystery will keep me reading into the next book. World building. I'm chalking this up to satire. Abercrombie does not try to explain how the northern barbarians could remain in a fledgling feudal state while the Union is in a post-Renaissance society complete with burgeoning middle class. We don't see enough of the Gurkish Empire for me to form an opinion, though if I'd hazard a guess, the Gurkish are frozen right around a highly volatile period of the Ottoman Empire's history. That is the only logical explanation I can fathom which explains the other two nations. Therefore, I predict that the old empire is probably like Italy when the Lombards invaded. This whole world just doesn't frighten me, just as Swift's modest proposal doesn't frighten me. Swift's proposal is well written and a classic, so I don't mean it as an insult to Abercrombie, but I also don't read Swift's proposal for fun. Plot. Never a dull or quiet moment. This was often an advantage as Glockner began involved in a trade dispute.
I sense an unusual amount of fear for something as trivial as this trade dispute.
Though this book, for all its noise, is somewhat slow. I thought Luther's midpoint would be the duel, not him deciding he wanted to do the duel, just to prove everyone wrong. That was the first moment I could relate to Luther and almost considered liking him. And then he kept talking. Logan's gang of named men were fun fillers, though I think it would have been more interesting if Bethod's son hadn't killed Folly the weakest, and the gang could have ended up fighting Vest. Instead, Bethod's family is just so one-note awful that they took the quick and less morally dubious route. I was pleasantly surprised at how well Abercrombie covered Folly's funeral. He overdid the eulogy a bit, in my opinion, but it almost touched my cynical heart. Oddly enough, I was sort of getting into it at the end. It was probably the least climactic ending I've read in a while, but that's just relative to everything else happening in the book. What's another death duel? Now that the team has finally come together and are off on an epic adventure, I was excited until I learned they were sailing to the end of the world. Words cannot describe how strong of an aversion I have to this trope. Odd, since that is my second favorite pirate movie. So it will take a lot of encouragement for me to finish this series. If this video gets 200 likes, I will do it. I've never challenged you guys before, and I'm curious to see how this all turns out. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.